following program is intended for mature audiences.
What do you say we have a rock and roll party?
All right.
You're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.
And download every episode and more at basicallyasportshow.com.
Now here's your hosts, Zach,
Greg,
Mike.
and you're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Playoff pairings came out today for girls soccer, so I have to write up a quick thing about what looks interesting.
None of it?
No.
You beat me to it.
No, man, Division I's a monster.
Yeah, it's the monster that you want to hide from and hopefully never see.
Well, yeah, okay.
So how was New York?
Awesome. I mean, I love going to the city. One of my favorite places in the world.
Was that your first time at the Garden or not?
First time ever at the Garden, though. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Which was amazing.
How'd you like hearing that Rangers goal song in person?
Oh, I wrote 4 damn times. Oh. It was, whoa, let's go Rangers.
Bump, 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 bump. Yeah, man.
The best part was, like, I actually had some real, like, New York people around me. Not New York people just right behind me. And you could hear them every time the chant would come up. Let's go Rangers.
Yeah.
Come on, Zook. Get it in the net, Zook. Come on. Yeah, let's go, Hank. Good save, Hank. There was another
They call
time
him Hank.
Yeah, and the Rangers were playing defense and the Ducks were circling the puck themselves. Some dude's like, "What are you doing? You standing in line for a ride at Disneyland? Let's move!" It's like, oh,
That's amazing.
these are good people. Like, nobody ever gave me any real crap. The one time the Ducks scored, I stood up and I heard from 3 rows back, "Hey, sit down, boo." But besides that, nobody was really mean to me or anything. I didn't get, insults thrown at me, or it was just a fun environment to be in, man.
Yeah, they're pretty cool, actually, the Ranger fans. They're not like, say, if you went to, I don't know,
The
Philly.
one I would be terrified, Philly. Yeah.
That I was trying to think of, like, or maybe like Boston would probably be not the greatest too. I don't know.
Well, that's what I said. Like, I was in an elevator somewhere wearing the jersey, and they're like, "Did they give you a hard time tonight?" And I was like, "No, not too bad. You guys aren't monsters like Philadelphia." And they're like, "Yeah, true that, right?" That was good.
Great place to see a hockey game, man. Best one I've ever been to.
You can tell that it's like this place knows what they're doing. It's not like they're just doing it for effect either. It's like, no. You're in Madison Square Garden. We know how to put on a show. Enjoy this. It was really, really great. I don't know if it's the best place. I still think Montreal, from a pure hockey standpoint and just everything else that surrounds you, Montreal was probably my best so far. But I'd still put MSG 2 or 3.
New York is like the only place in the world where it just feels different than any place else I've ever been. I don't know if you experienced that, Zach, but to me, it's like it has a completely different vibe from any city I've ever been to.
That's why I love going there. People say it a lot. They're like, "Oh, there's so much magic in the city, and it's a city that never sleeps," and all these things about New York. Even as somebody that's been born and raised in Southern California, which is kind of the antithesis of what New York is, I would live there in a heartbeat. I just love the energy that the city has.
It just has this, it's just got this thing, man. It's just a New York thing, and you can't describe it. You just have to experience it. The minute you step into it, it consumes you or something. I don't know. I can't even describe it really. You just go, yeah, this is New York, and you can just feel it in the air. It's really cool. If you're a hockey fan, you just got to go to Madison Square Garden for a Ranger hockey game. There's just no other thing like it. It's really cool.
I don't even know if you need to be necessarily just a hockey fan. I think if you're just a sports fan, go. It's worth your time. One of the things that makes sports great is the legacy teams. I guess I was thinking about this kind of with the Patriots when they won last week. Not to say that, the Patriots aren't really an establishment team, but you kind of look when they always compare like the number of Super Bowls won and all that. The Cowboys and Steelers did it with multiple eras. Yes, there was the Bradshaw 4, but Roethlisberger came up and won 2. You had the Staubach Cowboys, and then you had the Aikman Cowboys. Yes, the 49ers were one long dynasty, but you had Montana, and you had Steve Young. I think it would mean more if when the Packers win or when the Steelers win or when the Cowboys win. The other thing that kind of struck me was when I was in New York, I went to the NHL store, right? And they have a lot of cool merchandise for a lot of these teams. But when you look at the merchandise, there's a difference between Maple Leafs merchandise or Canadiens merchandise or whatever, and the new rack of Vegas Golden Knights merchandise. Like, I understand what the Vegas Knights are, and I understand they're going to be an NHL team, and they're going to be just, when it comes to, are you an NHL hockey team? Check the box. They're going to be the same as everybody else on the store in the racks, but it still doesn't feel right. It feels kind of weird to when you get these new teams in here that have no history and no. It's just creating things out of thin air, whereas these other things that are established, and there's kind of a bias in doing that, and it's obviously probably not fair. But I think you understand what I'm trying to get at.
I feel a lot of that actually in Tampa. I've seen that they do have a very passionate fan base, and it's a very good fan base. So I don't want to take anything away on that front. But one thing I've noticed is that for a team that actually does have a decent bit of history by this point, they still try to manufacture a lot of mythos, for lack of a better term. And it's just not really the same.
In their defense, they haven't been around long enough to really.
They haven't. But like Zach said, for a team that, like, do you qualify as an NHL team? Yes, you do. But the NHL is more fun, I would say, if the Canadiens are challenging for the cup than if, say, the Tampa Bay Lightning are.
I think when this kind of thought hit me too was when I was in New York. Because you see the Super Bowl on Sunday, and then I fly to New York on Monday, so it was very fresh. In New York, all of the teams are institutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been there. They are a part of the cultural fabric of the city.
Even the Jets and the Mets, who have only been around slightly longer than 60s. I've been. Yeah.
Right. Are the Vegas Golden Knights ever going to be part of the fabric of Vegas? Are the Raiders, if they move there, are they going to become part of the fabric of Las Vegas?
Absolutely not. I agree. That's why people say, well, it doesn't matter. The Raiders, they're going to be the Raiders anywhere. Well, yeah, technically, but where they fit the best is in Oakland. Because of that fabric you're talking about, the Oakland Raiders are part of the national fabric of sports, especially in the NFL.
Not even Toronto, just Kitchener. The Maple Leafs are sort of like the day after a game, everyone talks about it. And the Lightning, for as great of a fan base as they have, you don't really hear a lot of chatter afterwards because it's a niche fan base. It's not an engraved part of the city, I guess.
The fabric thing is important, and the legacy teams are important. And
yeah,
Well, with your Ducks, do you think you're ever going to get there with them?
In terms of being a fabric of the city, no. I mean, if the Ducks win, is it going to mean a lot to me? Yeah. It would be I would love it. Obviously, it would be a big deal because it's part of my everyday sort of life. It's just part of how I grew up. But am I going to be ignorant and say that the Ducks winning would be bigger than the Angels winning the World Series? No.
Well, you're on this path, I just thought of this, okay? When I was a Rangers fan, I felt like more of an NHL fan, if that makes any sense. I felt like people maybe took me more seriously. And it felt like I was rooting for I don't want to, it sounds like I'm going to, shit all over my Blue Jackets, and I don't mean it to sound like this.
A real team.
But it felt like I was rooting for a real team as opposed to the Blue Jackets. And again, it's nothing to do with ability, wins and losses, none of that. Just that the Rangers
are
the New York
original
Rangers.
Team.
Yeah. I don't know. Is that what you're kind of referring to? Because that's kind of how I feel. It's like the Jackets are great. I love them. They're a lot of fun, but they don't feel like, it feels like you said, like it's a created artificial experience almost, if that makes any sense.
Right. Well, to me, okay, here's another way to explain it. If the Rangers win a Stanley Cup, New York won the Stanley Cup. If the Ducks win the Stanley Cup, the Ducks, the team, has won the cup.
Exactly.
In a lot of these places where the teams are newer, or have even in New York, when you talk about, say, like the MLS teams that have come in there, if any of those teams ever win it, it's not going to be that New York has won the MLS Cup. It's this soccer club won the professional soccer trophy. If Vegas ever wins the cup, it won't be Las Vegas has won the Stanley. It's the Golden Knights franchise won the Stanley Cup.
I can't even imagine what's going to happen in Toronto if the Leafs manage to win the Stanley Cup.
That's the difference. I think that, for as much as we hate the Patriots and stuff, the hatred and all that would be 10 times higher if this were the Cowboys or the Steelers doing this because of who they are, even the Raiders to some extent. But because the Patriots are, I would put them in the category if they were a team with a created history and all that until the last 17 years, where they weren't quite at the...
Well, they were absolutely... They were a laughing stock.
They bounced in and out of the playoffs in the 80s. They were good for towards the latter part of the 70s, but they weren't anything outside of Foxborough. I mean, Boston, they can talk about how they love the Patriots. Bullshit. I've been here for all this, and I can promise you, when everybody says it's a whole bandwagon thing with the Pats, it absolutely is. Because
nobody gave a crap.
Nobody gave a shit about them, especially not Boston. They were the redheaded stepchild of Boston sports, and they can claim anything they want otherwise. I was here. I saw it. And, God bless them. I mean, they can do whatever they want. It's their team, and if they want to jump back on the bandwagon, more power to them. But spare me this whole, the Patriots are a big part of Boston sports history. Bullshit. Now they are, because they've turned into the evil empire. But before that, it was never the case, ever. They were the Blue Jackets of the NFL, basically. So spare me all the bullshit. I don't know. I kind of ran us off the rails there, but I get what you're saying, Zach. It's a hard thing to explain, but I know what you mean.
See, this is what happens when we just kind of create conversations. We started off somewhere and...
Conversationeering, as Mike calls it. Conversationeering.
Yes. Conversationeering.
So, speaking of being in the fabric of the national sports consciousness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, have the New England Patriots, with this recent run of success, joined the Steelers, Cowboys, et cetera, in the national fabric of the National Football League, nationally speaking?
No.
Not yet, no.
Like we were talking about a little bit earlier with the Cowboys and the Steelers and even the Packers and whatever, all these legacy teams have had different periods of success. Now, yeah, the Patriots made a Super Bowl before Tom Brady and all them, but...
Two of them, actually.
I will plead ignorance. I actually don't know the second one. I know the first one was them being the foil to the 85 Bears.
And the second time was the foil to Brett Favre and the 96 Packers. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
Let's look at this. I've got the list of teams right in front of me, Super Bowl standings. Steelers, 49ers, Cowboys. We all agree they're part of it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%.
Packers, Giants, Raiders.
Yeah, all three, I would say so.
Yeah.
The Washington Indigenous Peoples.
Oh.
I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say yeah, too. The dispute over their name and Dan Snyder's incompetence aside, this is a team that I think is deeply woven into the fabric of the National Football League. 5
Super Bowl appearances, 3 wins. The Broncos, I'm going to say definitely. I think the Broncos did what the Patriots couldn't, and they have managed to climb from maybe not being one of those teams to actually being one of those teams.
The Broncos were there during the AFL years, the John Elway years. Even when John Elway left, they've still been, even when they didn't have Peyton Manning, they've still been very relevant.
The Broncos have made a Super Bowl in the 70s, they made one in the 80s, made one in the 90s, and they've done it in the 2000s. Sure. Except for the 60s, they've been in every decade.
To me, the Broncos occupy the same headspace to me as the Dallas Cowboys. When I think who's the Dallas Cowboys of the AFC, the Broncos come to mind.
That's probably a fair analogy, I would say. Okay, how about, now this is an interesting one because we've got a situation here. The Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to say no.
No.
But had they not moved, I would say yes, because they would still be the original Cleveland Browns, which brings us to the next question. I think the old Browns were definitely part of the fabric. I think the new ones are definitely not.
I think that they... because of the dumb deal that they have, because they're considered the same team, I would say so. And because of all the history that we know of the old Cleveland Browns, that gets attributed to the new ones. And because they're bad, that is always a story year in and year out.
But seriously,
talk about the Cleveland Browns as being part of the NFL, just that they're the losers of the NFL.
But does anyone, even the most diehard Browns supporter, does anyone really look at this current Browns team and think that's the same team I was watching in 1986?
That's the same team that Jim Brown set all those records.
No one thinks that, right?
No.
More people than you think. For people your age, Greg, in your generation, yeah, I would say that they probably believe.
Oh, I think anybody that only knows this version of the Browns probably thinks of them as the only
right.
Browns.
I think people like Mike and we just think like I remember when I was first getting into the NFL and I was looking at all the records and stuff, and it's like, oh, the Cleveland Browns took a hiatus between 99 and whatever they came back in, or 95 or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Why would a team just shut down for 4 years? Odd. And so I just accepted what the NFL had told me was the fact.
For me, it's even weirder because the first Super Bowl, I remember watching other Super Bowls, but the first Super Bowl that I actually have concrete memories of witnessing was actually that Packers-Patriots Super Bowl in '96. And because of that,
I remember the year after, so right in that area. Yeah,
that was Broncos-Packers, right? The one afterwards.
Yeah, the helicopter.
Yep. Son of a bitch. You know, it was bad enough that he fucked me so many times in Cleveland. He comes back and does it again after I'm a Packers fan now. But I couldn't complain as much.
John Elway is Greg's personal.
I couldn't complain nearly as much because this time it happened in the Super Bowl, coming off a year when my team had just won the Super Bowl. So not quite the same gut punch it was in Cleveland.
That was sort of my introduction into NFL fandom. And then so for like 97, 98, I got the video games, and it's like, oh, well, there is no Cleveland Browns. And I just kind of always assumed the Browns were just one of those old teams that just sort of went away for those 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then when they came back, it was like, oh, well, I guess the Cleveland Browns are a thing again. And then it was only sort of later that I realized that there was this whole history swapping thing. And like, I came into the NFL right after the original Browns had left. So for my initial couple of years of NFL fandom, the Cleveland Browns were simply non-existent.
Yeah, and they've pretty much stayed that way ever since.
well, they are technically a team that fields players for league extension competition.
Wouldn't this, though, using the NFL's history model for this, wouldn't that make the Ravens the second most successful expansion team in NFL history behind the Cowboys?
I'm pretty sure they are, yeah.
Technically speaking, yeah.
Anyway, moving on down the list. Look, here's an interesting one where I think it could go either way. The Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
I'd say yeah. I would say yeah.
You count the Johnny Unitas Baltimore Colts in all that, of course, and the greatest game ever played. I was
just about to say that all of that legacy from the Baltimore Colts, they get to claim it.
What about the Miami Dolphins?
Ooh.
I'm gonna say yes, if only because of the 72 undefeated season. I think that sort of
season, Dan Marino years, you got a lot there.
They were very, very competitive in the 70s and the 80s, and I want to even say part of the 90s. This recent run, this is very un-Dolphins-like. That's usually not the way they do things.
They made the playoffs this year, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, there was a time there where they were every bit like, I guess probably a team that would be an apt comparison would be maybe the Broncos, the current version of the Broncos, kind of like along those lines where they were in the playoffs all the time. Maybe not always a Super Bowl contender, but they were always in the thick of it. How about the New Orleans Saints?
Oh, no.
I would say yeah, because of their fame for their ineptitude, finally getting a winning season and then becoming, reasonably competent. I think they are.
I don't think so. If anything helps them, I think it's the Katrina story.
You could go either way with the Saints. You could really argue either side, and I don't know that there's a clear case to be made either way.
Yeah, I think it goes either way. I think when we were talking about like teams being ingrained in the city versus like a franchise winning the Super Bowl, I think the Saints are kind of one of those newcomer teams in my mind, but they're also so ingrained into New Orleans more so than anything else that I would say that they're ingrained in the city, but they're right there on the edge. Like if the Saints had never gotten good, if Drew Brees had never came there, and all they had was Archie Manning and hosting the Super Bowl
that they probably won't get to again because the power blew out.
Well, I know with the Saints, like you were talking about, say if the Ducks won the Cup, Blue Jackets won the Cup, New Orleans won the Super Bowl that year. It wasn't just the Saints. I mean they do reach, they qualify in that respect. But like I said, I could go either way. To me, they're part of the fabric of the NFL, but mostly because they were the bottom feeders for a long time. All right, moving on, the New York Football Jets.
Yes,
I think so too.
Joe Namath, I think that guarantee, like we're going to shock the world. We're going to win the Super Bowl. I think, being the team that won the Super Bowl and proving the AFL was worthy enough for merger. Yeah. a lot of this comes down to mythos.
Yeah.
You've got Joe Namath, predicting victory. You've got Johnny Unitas in the greatest game ever played. Even the Saints, if we're going to include them, there's that mythos of Katrina devastated New Orleans, and then only a couple years later, we won the Super Bowl.
Okay, this one's going to be interesting because I think we're going to see a real age gap on this team. Maybe not. I don't know. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
No.
Okay, we all agree on that then. I thought maybe you guys would say they were, and I'm going to be like, no, because I remember when they were god-awful.
They're known for two things. They're known for the John Gruden Super Bowl win and the first winless season.
And that's mythos in entirely the wrong direction. You don't want to be known as the team that never won a game.
Right, they were the really bad team that wore creamsicle uniforms that they played in the NFC Central for however many goddamn years.
Had Steve Young and gave him to the San Francisco 49ers.
And Vinny Testaverde, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if that's such a big deal.
Be nice to Vinny. But anyway.
The next three, I think we're going to have no question on any of the three. Chicago Bears, definitely yes. Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah,
100%.
Los Angeles Rams, I'm going to say yes.
Weren't they Los Angeles' first sports team?
Yep.
Yeah.
And now, if they were the St. Louis Rams, I'm going to say no. For them to be part of this, they have to be in Los Angeles. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, because at that point, they were just another one of the teams that had moved, and they were a franchise that didn't belong to that city that won a Super Bowl in that city. Though the Rams won that Super Bowl, St. Louis didn't deserve it.
If the Cardinals win, St. Louis wins the World Series. If the Rams won the Super Bowl, the Rams won the Super Bowl. That's the way I see it with St. Louis. The Seattle Seahawks.
No.
I'm on a no on that one too.
I'm gonna say
they're flexible enough that they've switched conferences. You're not a fabric of the NFL.
Could anyone see the Broncos in the NFC?
No, and if they can move
the Cowboys in the AFC,
and if they can move you like that, and no one cares, that's a bad sign. And not that no one cared, but I mean it didn't create shockwaves like moving, say, the Giants to the AFC North. That would be like, what the hell's going on?
Right. There's a reason that we put up with the alignment of the NFC East for as long as we have.
Right.
Because that's just the way it is.
You can't take the Cowboys out of that division. I don't care how geographically screwed up it is. They've got to be in that division. It's as simple as that.
And it's a case where, like, the Seahawks are in kind of the same category as the Buccaneers, right? Where the Buccaneers are in the NFC Central for the longest time. Like, you had the Packers and the Lions and the Vikings and the Bears, and then I guess Tampa for reasons. And then in the AFC West for the longest time, you had the Chargers, the Raiders, the Broncos, the Chiefs, 4 teams that all hate each other to the core. And then I guess the Seahawks are here also.
Didn't the Buccaneers start out in the AFC? Didn't they swap those two, Tampa and Seattle? I don't remember.
Yeah, Seattle started in the NFC. Tampa started in the AFC, and so they swapped. The Seahawks stayed in the AFC, and the Bucs stayed in the NFC for the longest time until
the Houston expansion is what moved Seattle back to the NFC. Yeah,
the Houston expansion came in, and like you said, Greg, they were like, we need another team in the NFC. Just throw the Seahawks in, nobody will care.
Right. Okay. Next team on the list here. This is an interesting one too. I think it's a definite yes, but I want to see what you guys think. The Buffalo Bills.
Oh.
I don't know, man. I got to admit, this is tough.
To me, it's a no-brainer. I think it's a yes. Let's say that we're going to do this like with a circle. You've got the big dot in the middle with the Steelers, 49ers, Cowboys. I think the Bills are like the third circle out. They're still part of it, but they're on the fringes of it. I think they're part of it, but not to the same extent the bigger names are.
I'm trying to go back to my mythos thing, and the Bills have that, but it's mostly negative. Like, it's the Music City Miracle, which was against them. It's losing 4 Super Bowls, including one on a missed last-second field goal.
But that's still, nonetheless, I mean, negative or otherwise, it's still there.
Yeah, I guess.
You can't say that about the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay, here, you know what? The Browns now are just losers, but the Bills are the lovable losers of, the same way the Cubs were for forever. The Bills are the lovable losers of the NFL.
And know that if they ever win the Super Bowl, Buffalo wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think that there's probably not a more dedicated, diehard fan base in the NFL than Bills fans. I mean, they're really cool.
I'll allow it, but not for the same reasons that I've allowed everybody else. You know what? It would be 100% different if they just won one of those 4.
Oh, man.
Scott Norwood just had to make that kick, man.
I always have a little soft spot for the Bills because when the Browns left, they did this gesture where they said, we're going to have, once a season, we're going to have Dog Pound Day and invite Browns fans. And they did a really cool thing. So I've always got a soft spot for the Bills. The Minnesota Vikings.
Oh.
See, now to me, it's a definite yes. This team was just a monster in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, it's one of those things, because they haven't won previously, like you forget about the Fran Tarkenton Vikings. They played one of the first couple Super Bowls, yeah?
Yeah, they played, they were in Super Bowl 4, and then they played again. Yeah. They lost to the Dolphins in Super Bowl 8. They lost to the Raiders, right? And they lost 4. Let's see, they lost to the Chiefs, Dolphins, Raiders, and Steelers. Yeah, the 4 they were in was in a stretch of about maybe 10 years, not even quite 10 years. They went 4 times.
Yeah. And I think when they were threatening to move the Vikings from Minnesota to LA, I remember saying, the Vikings need to stay there. We don't want them. They right in Minnesota.
I think they are definitely a generational fabric thing where, like, to a guy my age, they are way more ingrained in the fabric than they are to you guys.
I'll give it to him, but I'm not really feeling it, but your arguments are convincing.
Atlanta Falcons.
No.
Ooh, no.
First of all, Atlanta, you let down everyone who didn't want to see them.
Right.
You just had to make one more field goal.
Ask us again in 3 months. We might change our minds, but right now we're still pretty upset with you guys, so no.
To be perfectly honest, I don't know if there's any team in Atlanta that feels like it's the fabric of its respective sport.
Maybe the Braves, maybe.
But the Braves are a lot of different things. They're the Milwaukee Braves, they're the Boston Braves. Are they Atlanta's Braves?
I'd say at this point they've been there since, I think, 66.
Oh, excuse me, but they're Cobb County's Braves now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I don't want to say it's a hard and fast rule, but in terms of being a kind of fabric of the league kind of thing, it helps if you're in the city that you're. Again, it's not necessary. The Cowboys can get away playing in Arlington or Irving or wherever they are. But for the Braves, you had like a perfectly good baseball stadium in downtown Atlanta, right, in the middle of the city, fabric of the city. And now you're moving to like suburban Georgia.
Well, they're going where the white people are. Let's just come right out and say it.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, that's what's happening.
Moving on down the list here, Carolina Panthers, that's a straight up no across the board, right?
No.
As much as Jerry Richardson would like them to be, no.
Okay, this one's interesting. The Cincinnati Bengals.
I'm going to say no.
Yes.
I say yes, too, but again, that might be because I'm looking at it from the perspective, A, I'm in Ohio. B, they used to have a really good rivalry with the Browns, and, they've made a couple Super Bowls. I'm going to put them in the yes category.
I'll say yes, too, because I think it also has to do with their founding, because their owner was the original owner of the too, right?
Yep.
Paul Brown?
Yep.
Yeah. I'll say yes to the Bengals.
This one's an easy one, too. Philadelphia Eagles, absolutely yes, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
no question about it. The last 3 are interesting. The next one, I think, had they not moved, I'd say yes, but since they've moved, I'm going to say no, the Arizona Cardinals.
Right. The Cardinals are the oldest franchise in the NFL, but because of the St. Louis to Arizona moves from Chicago to, and all that, and considering that they haven't been good in years, I mean, yeah, they went to the Super Bowl the one time, but another kind of blip on the radar sort of thing.
Yeah.
No.
It hurts me to say it, and it's almost amazing that the oldest team in the league is not interwoven into its fabric, but they really aren't.
And it's their own fault.
They've moved. They've never won anything. Now they play in awful uniforms. Like they're the 100-year-old team, but they don't look or act like a 100-year-old team. They act like the Phoenix Coyotes. They act like a team that moved from somewhere else that isn't that city's team. It's just the football team that plays there.
It's really odd. Like the Montreal Canadiens are the oldest team in the NHL, and it's like you don't have an NHL without the Montreal Canadiens. But with the NFL, it's almost like the Cardinals are the oldest team. It's almost sort of like an irrelevant trivia, like something like just something like, oh, well, that's odd, but all right, I guess.
I think they'd have a lot more juice had they stayed in St. Louis overall.
Nuts to that. Chicago Cardinals forever.
And finally, another team I think that had they not moved would be, but now that they've moved are not, the Tennessee Titans. The Houston Oilers, they were no?
I don't know.
That's tough. That's tough though, because I'm looking at it from
Houston Oilers besides Earl Campbell. What can you offer me from the Houston Oilers point of view on this?
They were really good in the 70s. Yeah, you're right. They're not.
They blew that one playoff game to the Bills.
You're right. They're not.
They played in the Astrodome.
Okay, well, this last one, I think we can all agree, had they not moved, they would definitely be yes, but now they are no longer. That would be the new Los Angeles Chargers.
Los Angeles Superchargers.
I think if they're still in San Diego, they're still part of it, I think, anyway.
Even if they're in San Diego, I don't know.
Okay.
It's hard. Yeah, I mean, for as great as they were in the 80s, they never made it to the Super Bowl. They got there in the 90s, and that team in the 90s probably shouldn't have gone to that Super Bowl, but they did, and then they played like they shouldn't have gone to that Super Bowl.
You dare mock the leadership abilities of the immortal Stan Humphries? Come on.
I do, okay?
And you're giving me a hard time about Vinny Testaverde.
My dad's got a Stan Humphries jersey, okay? And I will question the leadership abilities of Stan Humphries.
Look, I think if you can say that,
I thought his elbow pad and his like wrist guard setup were really cool, but no.
I think if you can say that your franchise's top five teams haven't actually played for a championship, which you could probably say for the Chargers when you combine the Dan Fouts years, the Phillip Rivers years, and the Drew Brees years, the LT years, in between both of those. Yes, the Super Bowl team made the Super Bowl, but if you put any of the Dan Fouts teams or the LaDainian Tomlinson Charger teams up against that 94
the Stan Humphries Chargers team,
I think I would pick one of the other ones.
Watch this segue, okay? The San Diego Chargers had absolutely no defense. One of the greatest offenses of all time, but no defense, and that's why they never made the Super Bowl. You said you want to take issue with some of the stuff I said, so let's pause here and we will do that.
Welcome back to The Cat Show. Up next, we have Nico. Nico is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right. A group known especially for their sunspot sleeping, ball chasing, leg rubbing, and of course, companionship. Just look how she struts.
It's like she owns the place.
And see how she curls up and cuddles her person.
The pitch on her purring is simply perfect.
Nice one.
Fantastic cat. But really the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Nico is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
So we'll pick it up with you taking umbrage with some of the things I said last week on last week's show. You had the unmitigated gall to disagree with me, which I can't believe. My argument was so well-reasoned and so perfect.
Disagree. Yeah, okay. So when we're talking about overall franchises, as we just listed, sure, the Patriots aren't part of the fabric of the NFL.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the greatest. Like,
I know. I'm getting to it.
Okay.
So yes, in terms of is this current Patriots team the greatest of all time? This season? No. Is this run of success from 2000, 2001, whenever it started, to now, is this 15-year stretch the greatest in NFL history? Yes.
I just don't think that they are. I forget how I put it last week, but I think it was tougher to do back in the 80s, 90s, 70s than it is now.
The other thing that you did make points where I remember this part of the conversation where, and it's something we've talked about on the football show numerous times. The Patriots in the AFC, there hasn't been a whole lot of competition. It's a few teams. It's Steelers, Patriots, whatever team Peyton Manning's been on.
But is that really something that you can hold? Like you can only beat who you put in front of them.
Right, and it's the same reason that the reason that the Patriots have won the division every year except for the one time when Tom Brady was injured and they still won 11 games and missed the playoffs somehow. There's a lot of factors that go into the absurdity, I guess, of some of the numbers they have. You know, the length of the streaks and the winning, the total number of wins. But when it comes to the end of the day, you come to the playoffs, they're not playing the Buffalo Bills every week in the playoffs. They're still playing playoff teams, and they're still going to the Super Bowl, and they're still playing the best team from the other conference. And maybe the whole league is down talent-wise, and, you know, yes, they're not playing the 85 Bears. They're not playing, the
90s Giants.
Sure, the 90s Giants. They still win the games. And it's hard to say, and just the amount of different ways that they've done it, the Patriots. I think one of the things that really killed about this Super Bowl in particular is, the Patriots have won before, but now for them to add the feather in the cap of greatest comeback of all time.
And not only that, but because it was the greatest comeback of all time, you could argue greatest Super Bowl of all time.
Right, and I hate the Patriots. You guys know this. I hate the Patriots. I hate Tom Brady. And if they had just won the game in a regular fashion way, they'd still have all the other records, and we wouldn't be able to take that away from them. They'd still be annoying as hell, sure. But the fact that they get to be like, oh, yeah, now we're the Patriots. We get the greatest comeback of all time, first overtime victory, Pats Nation, baby. Tom is the greatest living human ever to grace the earth.
We've got countries in Africa that have been around longer than Pats Nation.
Right.
If people might get that joke, they might not. A little perspective here, okay? After Mike and I did the show, I started looking a little bit more into this, and the team that the Patriots are most like are the 49ers of the 80s and in the mid-90s. The 49ers also won 5 Super Bowls in that stretch. I just counted. I want to say they won 13 division titles to New England's maybe 14. I'm trying to count and talk to you guys at the same time. So, I mean, yeah, it's a great stretch, but it's not as historic as we think it is because it's been done once before with almost the exact same results. You got the 5 Super Bowls. They did it with 2 quarterbacks versus 1. That's a big difference.
But does that make them better that they did it with 2? Or is that more of a tribute to the system?
I think the Patriots get the nod on the fact that they did it with the same quarterback 5 times.
And a whole different crew receivers pretty much every time.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, too.
Everybody entirely different defense every single time.
Everybody knocks their receivers. I don't say knock, but they're like, look, he's doing with these receivers. It's not like, these guys still have to get open for him to throw them the ball. It's not like they stand up there like fucking statues and he just hits them.
Or Julian Edelman just stops space-time.
Yeah.
God. How did that have to happen?
Is Julian Edelman,
why?
Is Julian Edelman Jerry Rice? No, but give the guy some credit. He's a good football player.
That's the other thing that we can't take away from them. They had a Tyreek catch against them, and now they have their own. What the hell?
Not only did they have their own Tyreek catch against them, but they have their own Tyreek catch that completely invalidated the Falcons' Tyreek catch. Although it is worth, I brought up last week's show. Apparently, there was a shot of Julian Edelman when he visited Israel praying at the Western Wall. So apparently, he had God on his side for that game.
I don't think I'm ready to give Brady the greatest quarterback of all time thing because
the thing about it,
he didn't play. And okay, forget talent-wise or anything else. The defensive rules were a whole lot different back when Montana and Bradshaw were doing this than they are today, and that's got to count for something.
Of all the things that you're going to argue about these Patriots, the Tom Brady, Joe Montana one, even though Tom has more Super Bowls, played in and more Super Bowls won now. And how many MVPs did Montana have, Super Bowl MVPs?
3, I think.
I think the one thing that's kind of inarguable out of all of it, Bill Belichick's the greatest coach of all time.
That I don't even argue. I think you're foolish to even try to make that argument otherwise, right?
The guy's a maniac.
Yeah.
He's an absolute monster. 2 days after he won, somebody's asking him, like, oh, how's this feel? Well, we're 5 weeks behind everybody else.
Yeah.
Who thinks like that?
He does, and that's why they're where they are.
The same person does.
Yes.
And that's Mike, we're talking about the Edelman catch. Mike and I talked about it last week. That is coaching to me. That Julian Edelman, throughout that entire play, never gave up on it.
Have you guys seen the mic'd up of Julian Edelman yet?
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it. I haven't seen all of it yet, but yeah.
Okay, so they show up at the end of the game, and something that just kind of struck me is the mentality that a player like that has on the Patriots. When they score the winning touchdown, everybody else is going to go nuts. But as the confetti's falling, there's only 3 or 4 people that are like, everybody get off the field. They've got to review it still. One of those people is Tom Brady. The other one's Bill Belichick. And the other one's Julian friggin' Edelman. He's yelling at guys.
Yeah.
They haven't reviewed the fucking play yet. And then eventually Bill Belichick comes over to him. He's like, Julian, they reviewed it. We're good.
Bill Belichick I called him a stone cold gangster because that's what he is, man. This guy is ruthless. He's the best, and no one's ever going to do it better than this. And on that, I will give the Patriots the edge because he has done it He's had the same quarterback, but I mean, the cast of characters that have run through that place over the past 17 years, I
just
mean,
picks up some third string running back who's been cut, puts him on his team. He runs for 100 yards.
He's a great talent evaluator.
People still trade with the Patriots, and I don't know why.
I don't either.
Why would you trade with the Patriots ever?
If I were the Cleveland Browns and they called me tomorrow, the Patriots, and said, we'll give you Tom Brady for Cody Kessler, I wouldn't do it. I'd be like,
Cody
no way.
Kessler, the next greatest quarterback of all time.
I'd be like, no, if Belichick wants Kessler, wants to get rid of Brady, I'm not doing this deal. How many of their deals have backfired on them? Can you even think of any?
Did they trade for Jamie Collins?
I don't know.
I think they did.
Was that this year?
They traded for him, and then they traded him away during this season.
Okay.
Did they trade for Randy Moss? Did they sign him?
I don't remember.
But even so, he was there for a year, and it's not like he wasn't good. They just didn't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he still produced.
He was incredible. Yeah. I mean, my God, him and Brady, that was like Bryce and Montana again, you know?
I remember that year, I watched the opening game they played against the Raiders. On like the third play, he threw a bomb to the Randy Moss down the sideline. I said to myself, so we're just not going to beat the Patriots this year. we're just going to live this nightmare for the next 18 weeks. Luckily, we had the New York Giants ultimately on our side. But yeah.
I just think that with the Patriots, again, greatest team of this decade or this era, absolutely, without question. But you got to judge everything from the era it's from, and I think that's why I give Montana the nod over Brady as a quarterback, because Montana had tougher defensive rules to deal with. And I look at it, I look like a guy like Dan Fouts of Mike's Chargers. I think, my God, that guy was shredding the league back in the early 80s when you were still allowed to play defense. What would he do today? 6,000 yards in a season would be completely within his reach. That's not to say that I don't think Brady's good or that he's not one of the greatest of all time. I just don't know that he would have had quite this much success had he played in the same era Montana did.
With Brady, I think I kind of fall that ultimately, if you're arguing between him and Montana, it's so close that ultimately the only thing that you can say definitively is it's Brady and then Montana and then everyone else. The thing with Brady, though, is that, and it goes back to what Zach said, where it's like, not only are the Patriots the annoying Patriots, but now they're the Patriots who get to say we had the greatest Super Bowl victory of all time. We had the greatest comeback of all time. It's that, well, Tom Brady did that. Joe Montana never. Well, there was I think 23 against the Bengals where he did the 2-minute.
The John Candy drive, drill.
Yeah. He didn't have to come back from 25 points down to win that game.
No,
and he never had to do that in any of his Super Bowls.
No, but he didn't need to because their teams were so damn good. Like, I mean, you don't need to come back from 25 when you're beating the Broncos 55-10. Or when you're beating a Miami team with Dan Marino, who had passed for 5,084 yards that season, and they beat them 38-16.
Yeah, if you're going to make a knock on the Patriots, too, none of their games have been blowouts. The only one that they won comfortably, I think, is the Eagles game.
Yeah.
Which was a lot closer than I thought it was. I think that was because, like, the Eagles scored in garbage time. Like, that game I don't think was as close as the score.
Yeah, they brought it within 10 late or something like that.
Yeah, that was the famous Donovan McNabb taking his merry old time in the 2-minute warning and puking on the field and everything else. And
Andy
back to
Reid
vet will tell you all
screwed
about
up
it.
Clock management? No.
I know, it's hard to believe, isn't it?
He has the 2 military kicks, this comeback, and what was the other one? They had to kick against the Panthers and the Rams.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Then they beat the Eagles.
They beat the Eagles and
they beat the Seahawks.
Seahawks, right.
Oh, right. On the dumbest play call of all time.
But that's the thing. I mean, now look, if you really want to get nitpicky about it, and this is, first off, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't believe a word of what I'm about to say, but if you wanted to get nitpicky about it, you could say that they were also the beneficiaries of some pretty shitty play calling in these last 2 Super Bowls.
Oh, my God.
But on the other hand, though, doesn't that speak to Bill Belichick where, like, he is able to just thoroughly outcoach you to the point where you make those mistakes?
I read a really interesting coaching.
I read a really interesting article.
It's overthinking yourself.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I read this article. I don't remember who wrote it. It might have been on Deadspin. I don't remember, but they talked about the fact that a lot of these guys with lesser experience, they are coaching against Belichick. They start out thinking themselves and start going, "Oh my God, he's going to figure out a way," and they completely melt down because of his aura. It's nothing he's doing. And again, I'm not taking, he's the greatest coach of all time, but sometimes they just get in the spotlight and they wilt because, oh my God, it's Bill Belichick.
Well, Well, as friend of the show, Kramerica said, it's hard enough to coach against Bill Belichick. Once you start trying to coach against the aura of Bill Belichick, you're toast.
Yep, and that's what these guys are doing. Like I said last week, and I don't mean this as a knock on the Patriots. I think they are definitely up there in the all-time great dynasties in the NFL. But I'm not ready to anoint Tom Brady like everyone else is. And I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel about it. I can't back it up. I told Mike last week, I've got the eye test. I watched them both play. I think Montana's better.
It's probably just that. Like if we had seen Joe Montana, not the Kansas City Chiefs Joe Montana, but actual Joe Montana, maybe we have a different thought. But when I'm looking at it just based on numbers, it's semantic, sure. But Tom Brady's the winningest Super Bowl quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
He's played in 7, won 5. And when you think about it, yes, they won a couple on slim margins, but the 2 they lost were pretty slim too.
This could easily be the Tom Brady, the 7-time Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, of course they're obviously important, but just looking at it from just a quarterback versus quarterback, the Super Bowls are great and all that, but
ask Dan Marino how important the Super Bowl is.
I think there's a lot that goes into being a quarterback too, besides just being able to throw and run a game and all that, because a guy like Marino kind of reminds me of Phillip Rivers a little bit today. He was a guy that yelled all the time and got upset and threw shit. And I always just thought, you don't see guys like this winning a whole lot. They put up great numbers and everything, but when it came time to play the Super Bowl, and whatever Super Bowl it was an 84 season. I remember that. And that was like the dream matchup, 49ers, Dolphins. This is as good as it gets. Montana versus Marino. Joe Montana just made him look like a fool. Wasn't even close. Somebody, I forget who it was, we were having this discussion on the board, and somebody said that Brady was as cool as it got. Montana wasn't. I'm like, no. Montana was pretty cool in his own right when it came to not letting anything get to him. He was every bit as joyless and methodical as Brady is. Maybe more so. I don't know. It's just the way I feel about it. I don't know that anybody's going to get me to change my mind. And I'm sure that in 30 years, somebody's going to come along that's going to win 6 Super Bowls, and everybody's going to go, I'm sorry, but Brady's still better. That'll be one of you guys doing that, I'm sure. 30 years.
Maybe it's one of those things where when the numbers were a little bit more even in terms of the Super Bowl wins, I always held Peyton Manning up as that being the actual better quarterback than Tom Brady in terms of his ability. But when it comes down to who is the best, who has won the most, he's won the most. And whether that's by his coach, his team, the competition he played against, whatever things we've discussed, at the end of the day, when you go look at the number of who's won the most Super Bowls, Tom Brady is the quarterback with the most Super Bowl victories. I hate that. I hate that. Oh, God, do I hate that. But it is what it is.
When you go back, it's kind of the same argument I used when we were discussing which teams are and aren't, I guess, integral to the fabric of the NFL. To me, a lot of it comes down to mythos. When you talk about mythos, Joe Montana has that Super Bowl 23 comeback, but really he just ran roughshod over everyone. I mean, he beat the Bengals, he beat the Broncos, beat the Dolphins, and then there's that one Bengals game that was close at the end. With Tom Brady, you've got those other 4 Super Bowls that were close in their own right, although I maintain that Eagles game wasn't as close as the final score indicates.
No, I think everybody agrees with that.
But it's not just that he has 5 now. It's that he got the 5th one by winning one of the most exciting NFL championship games of all time. I think that builds mythos. I mean, a lot of what we know of the NFL, honestly, it comes through NFL films. It comes through the story that was told about the game. And I think that in terms of establishing a legacy, I still don't think the Patriots are ingrained in the fabric of the NFL.
No,
because
I think the other thing that will kind of in that sort of vein, Mike, that will help define Tom Brady, and it's kind of hard because it's going on right now, but to me, it will also depend on what happens when he finally goes away.
Yes, exactly.
What comes after him? Because right now we're in it, we can see it, and it's just looking at the numbers, and he's the greatest of all time, and oh my God, and Patriots. But what happens when we finally get away from Tom Brady? Do the Patriots go back to being what they used to be? Do they go away? Do they fade away? Well, first off, does Bill Belichick stick around and try to win things with Jimmy Garoppolo for the rest of his life?
I don't think he wants it to be like, okay, you couldn't have done this without Brady. Kind of like, I was going to say Phil Jackson, but Phil Jackson's always had superstars everywhere he coached. So you really can't use that argument. To give you an example, the 49ers, what was going to happen to them? Well, they were fortunate enough to have Steve Young as Montana's backup, so they kind of didn't miss a beat. But does that take any of the shine off of what Montana did, that Young was able to win a Super Bowl, 5-6 years after the last one Montana won? I mean, I don't know.
In terms of the Pats franchise as a whole, all right, the Pats were bad for a long time, but so were the Steelers. There was a time where the Steelers were pretty bad.
They were bad for forever until, I think, 1970.
And then they got good, but it wasn't just the Bradshaw years. It was the Bradshaw years and then the Roethlisberger years. The combination of those two is sort of what's kind of ingrained them in the fabric of the NFL, because it wasn't just one Steelers team that did it all. There was a sustained legacy of greatness that kind of transcended generations. So for the Patriots organization as a whole, if in, say, 10 years' time, when both Brady and Belichick have retired, if the Patriots are able to put together another team with another coaching staff and another core of players that's able to win 2 or 3 Super Bowls, then I think they kind of get to that sort of enshrined status, but they're not there yet. In terms of Tom Brady, though, Zach's entirely right. In 10 to 20 years, what are we going to look at in terms of Tom Brady? How is that Patriots' success or failure going forward going to reflect on the legacy of Tom Brady?
I just want to throw in a quick nugget about the Steelers here while you were talking about them and how they used to be bad and then they got good. From 1972 until today, which is what? My brother's was born in 72, so it'd be like 44 years. How many losing seasons do you think the Steelers have had in 44 years?
3.
6. In 44 freaking years, 6 losing seasons. That's it. That, to me, establishes them as the greatest franchise in NFL history, because that's just ridiculous. I think they only had a stretch where they had back-to-back losing seasons in that stretch twice, maybe only once. It's just insane.
I think another thing, if we want to make a knock on Brady, what exactly is he good at? Like, yeah, he wins. They win the games. And yes, we've said that he does these things with a lot of good receivers, but what are his physical traits as a quarterback that make him good? Does he run particularly well? No.
Montana was a better runner, that's for sure.
Is he an accurate passer? I guess. Does he have a big arm? Does he throw a lot of deep passes?
No.
Not really. What does he do?
He wins Super Bowls.
He's very smart.
I'll tell you what he does. He wins close games. If you're playing the Patriots close and you give Tom Brady the ball back in the final minutes of that game, you're screwed.
You're dead, yeah. That's what I used to say about Joe Montana. If he had a minute left on the clock, he would score on you from the parking lot, because it was just a sense of inevitability. Whereas I think some of these other guys, I'll use Peyton Manning for an example. I would see him with the ball at the last 2 minutes. I think, okay, odds are he's probably going to do this. With Montana, and I think even Brady, it was certainty, like he is going to do this. Where with Peyton, you're like, more than likely he's going to do this, but there's a very good chance he might not. Not with those two.
With the most recent example, of course, being the Super Bowl, when you guys kind of talked about this too, but when they're down 25-3, I'm not thinking about it. There's no way. When they get the first touchdown back, and it's like, oh no, they're going to fucking do this, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's like being chased down by a Terminator, isn't it?
But yeah, you asked what Brady does, that's what he does.
Yeah, and I said it out loud, so my girlfriend's like, "Why are you putting that out in the universe? Keep that to yourself." And I was just like, and then of course I'm just sitting there. I'm like, they're gonna come back and they're gonna force the first overtime and they're going to win because of the fucking Patriots, and this is what they goddamn do.
Yep.
And it's what they goddamn did.
And then all the players go out for the coin toss or overtime, and the Patriots win it, and then it's just like, oh well, this is inevitable.
But as soon as they got it, it's like, you hope for them to maybe make a stop, but once they get that first down, it's, oh no. The Patriots are going to win this football game, and Atlanta is going to pull in Atlanta and just do what Atlanta tends to do in everything else.
Our favorite writer, Zach, Peter King, he was at the game on the sideline when the coin flip happened, and he said as soon as he saw the Patriots won, he thought game over. That's just the way it goes. So Mike and I talked about it. This is the worst gut punch loss of all time, right? It's got to be.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to comment on too, you kind of brought up when Keith Olbermann told the Seahawks to fold basically and start over.
Yeah.
The Falcons are done.
Exactly. Right. They can't get the stink out of this.
Yeah, Matt Ryan is a very good quarterback. He will never win. Matt Ryan will never win a Super Bowl.
I think the only way they overcome this is if they come back and win the Super Bowl next year, which that's probably not going to happen. Anything short of that, yeah, it's done.
Nope. They had their shot. They did everything that they could have done. They went up by 25. Even when the Patriots came back, they had the Julio Jones catch. They were there. The Super Bowl was in front of them, the ring, the championship belt.
They just had to run the ball up the middle 3 times.
When they were there with the 4 minutes to go at the Pats 22, I'm honest to God thinking, I wonder what the ring's going to look like. It's probably going to be pretty cool because you're going to have that black falcon on it. They're probably going to do the lines and rubies. I thought that's going to look like a good-looking ring. That's where I was at. When he got sacked, forget the holding call that really screwed him. When he got sacked, I said, this is over. They're not going to win this game.
The thing that screwed it, when they fumbled on the first drive, the sack fumble.
Yeah.
It's 3rd and 1. Yeah. You ran the ball the first 2 plays for 9 yards and you're going to throw on 3rd and 1?
That's trying to outsmart the myth of Belichick, the aura of Belichick, though.
Get your first down.
See, I think, when they were up 28-3 in that same spot, say maybe you've got 8 minutes left in the third quarter, 3rd and 1, you want to take a shot, I'm all for it. Keep the hammer down. When you get to the point where they were at with 4 and change to go, they're in field goal range. No, don't go for the jugular anymore. Now you want to run out the clock, put points on the board, and make it impossible for them to come back. And wow. I mean, San Francisco's got to be thrilled they got this guy, right?
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, who's he replacing? I mean,
Chip Kelly.
I think he still is. I think it still is a net gain. This team, they need to do everything short of actually folding the team. Like, they need to clear out all the personnel. They need to clear out the coaching staff. They need to clear out the front office. They need to change the logo. They need to change the uniforms.
Literally, my first thought after the game, after I was done cursing the Patriots in my head, the next thought I had was, how do you come back? If you're the Falcons, how do you come back next season and give it the same effort that you gave this year or in that Super Bowl?
I will say that Dan Quinn, I think, is going to be a really good coach. He might be the guy that can get a team through this. I wouldn't bet on it, but he might be able to do it. But if they don't win the Super Bowl next year, that's it. The following season, blow it up and start over. Because it's not going to happen.
This is the Seahawks interception. This is even bigger gut punch than this.
This is 10 times worse.
There is undeniable stench in this team now. Everything is permeated with we blew it. From now on, even when people aren't meaning to disparage the Falcons, whenever they show a highlight reel or an NFL film special on the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, even if it's only meant to celebrate the Patriots and not disparage the Falcons, it is always going to be at the Falcons' expense.
The other question I had to kind of put the bow on these things, the Patriots are still the favorites to win next year, right?
Yep, sure are.
and conversation about Tom Brady is he the greatest and all that. If Tom Brady can win, he won this one at 39. But say he comes back next year, there's no reason the Patriots won't be as good, and they win back-to-back, and Brady wins his 6th.
Yeah, I'm having a tougher time making the argument every year.
If they come back and do this again when he's 40,
the only thing that happens is if basically what happens to Brett Favre happens to Tom Brady, where Favre had that first season in Minnesota, he was on fire, had a great season. Obviously, he Brett Favre'd the playoffs away, but still, all in all, he looked fantastic. Then he comes back for one more season, and just, I guess, something happened in that offseason, and he was now just old man Brett Favre who couldn't play football very well. And I think that's the only thing to watch out for of Tom Brady, because he's now getting to the age where it's almost like a switch. Just one day, you're just suddenly not able to do it.
I'm going to tell you, having done it, gone from 39 to 40 myself, something does happen. I hit 40, and all of a sudden, things that were really easy weren't quite as easy. Now, obviously, I'm not a well-conditioned athlete like Tom Brady, but there is a switch that flips of some sort when you get into that 4th decade of life. I don't know why.
And that's honestly, I think, the only thing that can stop the Patriots is the inevitable ravages of time.
Part of you wonders why he doesn't say, okay, I got my 5th, good night. I mean, could you really go out any more on top than he is right now? You just engineered the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. You've got your 5th ring, blah, 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 the whole bit. What better time to ride off into the sunset? I mean, I respect the hell out of the fact that he's not. I think that's cool, but wow, it would be really tempting, I would think, to do that.
I think that's ultimately what will happen. I don't know if he, like I said, he hasn't shown any sort of physical sign of slowing down ever. At some point, he's just going to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Whatever he decides that's going to be. Because here's the other thing is, like, not only do they have the modern dynasty, the 3 and 5 years or wherever it was back then they have the 5 of them now. They have the comeback. They have the overtime win. They have the stick in the middle finger to Roger Goodell. Literally, what else does he have to accomplish at this point, Tom Brady?
Nothing.
Literally nothing.
No, I mean,
he's done every single thing you could ever want to do in a professional quarterback.
Yeah, and as far as stats and all that go, if there's a sport that people care about stats less than the NFL, I don't know what it is.
He's not like Peyton Manning where it's like, if you just play another year, you'll get the most wins or you'll get the most touchdowns or you get the most whatever.
And I honestly don't think he cares all that much about that sort of thing.
What did you guys think of Gaga on the halftime show? I thought visually it kicked all sorts of ass, but I'm not a big fan of her music.
I'm not much of a Lady Gaga fan. And in fact, I honestly don't pay much attention to the halftime show. Super Bowl halftime shows, man, like, whatever. They're there.
The only two that I've like really gone out of my way and looked forward to was U2 because they're one of my favorite bands and I wanted to see them, and Prince because I wanted to see what he was going to do, and it turned out he did pretty well. But really, for the most part, I could care less.
Whatever happened to just having like the local high school do a marching band?
Well, you got to go back to like Super Bowl 1 and 2 to get that stuff. Up with people.
Up with people.
Anything else, guys?
No.
We're going to call it a night. You guys know the routine. Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports. Go to the website. Subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, and find us on Facebook.
Go Los Angeles Chargers of Los Angeles.
Go Jackets. Go Cavs. And on that note, we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Later.